For years, a storm has been brewing in the Middle East. Israel and Iran fought a hidden conflict, a clandestine struggle waged in the shadows. It was a war of cyber attacks, sabotage, carried out in secret, and proxy battles across the Middle East, fought by allies and supported from afar. But in June 2025, everything changed. The shadow war exploded into open confrontation, shattering the fragile peace. The unspoken rules were shattered, the lines were crossed. As a result, both nations launched direct missile attacks at each other's territory, marking a dangerous escalation. This was no longer a proxy fight, the gloves were off. It was a direct clash between two regional powers, a head-to-head collision. The strikes sent shockwaves through the region and the world, demanding immediate attention from global leaders, turning a simmering rivalry into a terrifying reality, filled with uncertainty and fear. Suddenly, the risk of a major war was no longer theoretical, but a very real and present danger. The world watched with bated breath as the conflict escalated, unsure of what would come next, threatening to destabilize the entire Middle East, and potentially dragging other nations into the fray. In this video, we'll break down the June 2025 missile attacks, examining the key events. We'll explore why the shadow war erupted, uncovering the underlying causes and triggers, what happened on the ground, the immediate aftermath and the impact on the affected areas, and how the world responded, from diplomatic efforts to condemnations and calls for peace. We'll hear from families in Tel Aviv and Tehran, sharing their personal stories, whose lives were upended by air raid sirens and uncertainty, forced to seek shelter and safety. We'll examine the reasons each side gives for its actions, analyzing their justifications and motivations, and what this means for the future, the potential long-term consequences of this conflict. The story isn't just about governments and armies, it's about more than just the official narratives. It's about ordinary people caught in the crossfire, their hopes, fears, and resilience. Understanding this moment is crucial for comprehending the complexities of the region, as its impact will shape the region for years to come, influencing political and social dynamics. Will tensions keep rising, leading to further escalation and instability? Or is there hope for de-escalation, a path towards peace and stability? Let's dive into the events that brought the shadow war into the light, uncovering the truth behind the headlines. The world changed in June 2025, forever altering the geopolitical landscape. Here's how, as we begin to unravel the story of the shadow war's eruption. The roots of the June 2025 missile exchange run deep, entwined in decades of geopolitical maneuvering and simmering animosity. This wasn't a spontaneous eruption, but the culmination of years of escalating tensions. Iran's nuclear program has long been a flashpoint, a source of intense international scrutiny and a major point of contention in the region. Tehran claims it's peaceful for energy and medical purposes, but Israel and the West fear a secret weapons push, a clandestine effort to develop nuclear warheads. Israel has vowed to prevent Iran from getting the bomb, seeing it as an existential threat to its very survival and security. In the months before the attacks, mysterious explosions rocked Iranian military and nuclear sites, raising suspicions of covert operations. Iran blamed Israel and promised revenge, vowing a swift and decisive response to what they perceived as acts of aggression. Meanwhile, Israel accused Iran of arming groups like Hezbollah and Hamas, fueling a cycle of threats and suspicion, and further destabilizing the region. The immediate trigger, the spark that ignited the powder keg, a top Iranian general was assassinated in Syria, widely believed to be an Israeli operation, a targeted killing that sent shockwaves through the region. Humiliated and seeking to reassert its power, Iran decided to retaliate directly, to send a clear message, launching missiles at Israeli military targets, breaking years of proxy warfare and escalating the conflict to a dangerous new level. This was a red line crossed, forcing Israel to respond in kind, triggering a chain reaction that threatened to engulf the entire region. The shadow war was now an open conflict, with both sides gambling that force would restore deterrence, a dangerous game with potentially catastrophic consequences. The world braced for what came next, fearing a wider war and a humanitarian disaster. The escalation was sudden, but the tensions had been building for years, a slow burn that finally reached its explosive climax. June 2025 was the breaking point, the month when decades of animosity boiled over into open warfare. The missiles flew, and the region would never be the same, forever scarred by the events of that fateful month. The first missiles struck before dawn on June 15th, shattering the morning calm. The attack signaled a dangerous escalation. Iran launched dozens of ballistic and cruise missiles at Israel, a coordinated barrage intended to overwhelm defenses. Air raid sirens wailed across the country, sending millions scrambling for shelter, their hearts pounding with dread. Israel's Iron Dome and David Sling, technological marvels of defense, intercepted most. But some missiles evaded the shield, hitting near military bases and civilian areas, spreading fear and chaos. Israel retaliated within hours, vowing a swift and decisive response, targeting Iranian launch sites, command centers, and strategic infrastructure. Explosions rocked western Iran, shaking the ground and sending plumes of smoke into the sky, and satellite images later revealed significant damage, confirming the effectiveness of the strikes. The war was no longer silent. The simmering tensions had finally erupted into open conflict. Each side unleashed more missiles and drones in the days that followed, escalating the conflict with every passing hour. Daily life in both countries ground to a halt. Fear gripped the populace. Schools closed, businesses shuttered, and anxiety soared as people braced for the next attack. Each new strike was a message, a demonstration of power and resolve. Neither side willing to back down, locked in a dangerous cycle of retaliation. After nearly a week, the relentless barrage began to take its toll. International pressure, mounting from all corners of the globe, finally forced a pause. Both governments realized a full-scale war, with all its potential consequences, would be catastrophic. A tense quiet settled, a fragile calm hanging in the air. But the precedent was set. The rules of engagement had changed. Direct attacks were now on the table, a chilling new reality. The fear and mistrust ran deeper than ever, poisoning any hope of reconciliation. The world was left wondering, what would come next? Was this just the beginning of a much larger conflict? The Shadow War had become a week of terror, leaving scars that would last for generations. The region would not soon forget the fear, the destruction, and the uncertainty that had gripped it. As missiles flew, the world held its breath. The UN Security Council called an emergency session, urging restraint and a ceasefire. The US condemned Iran's attack and pledged support for Israel, moving military assets into the region. Russia and China called for calm, warning that escalation could destabilize the entire Middle East. Oil prices spiked, stock markets tumbled, and global supply chains shuddered. Ordinary people worldwide felt the impact. Rising fuel and food prices, economic uncertainty. Middle Eastern countries like Saudi Arabia and Jordan scrambled to prevent the conflict from spilling over their borders. Behind the scenes, regional powers pushed for de-escalation, fearing a wider war. The crisis exposed just how interconnected and fragile the global order really is. Diplomacy was suddenly a matter of survival. The world's urgent calls for peace played a crucial role in halting the attacks. But the sense of danger lingered everywhere. For Israelis, the week of missile attacks was a nightmare. Sirens, shelters, and the constant fear of the next strike. Streets emptied in seconds. Families huddled together trying to comfort terrified children. Even with advanced defenses, the psychological toll was immense. In Iran, explosions near military sites sent shockwaves through nearby communities. Panic, rumors, and a sense of national anger swept the country. Schools closed, work stopped, and supermarkets saw panic buying as people braced for worse. The attacks deepened political divides and fueled nationalist sentiment on both sides. Across the region, neighboring countries tightened borders and canceled flights, fearing the violence would spread. Families with loved ones in the conflict zones waited anxiously for news. The missile war was not just a headline, it was a direct threat to millions' safety and future. The human cost was immediate and profound. The scars will last long after the missiles stopped. Each side told a different story. Israel framed its actions as self-defense, responding to years of Iranian aggression and the threat of a nuclear-armed enemy. The assassination of the Iranian general was, in their view, a necessary preemptive strike. Israel presented evidence of Iranian weapons shipments and argued it was protecting not just itself, but the region. For many Israelis, the direct missile attacks confirmed their fears and justified a strong response. Iran, meanwhile, saw itself as the victim targeted by sanctions, sabotage, and foreign attacks. The missile strikes were framed as a legitimate response to violations of their sovereignty. Iranian leaders claimed their nuclear program was peaceful, and their regional influence a defense against outside interference. The attacks became a rallying point for national pride and resistance. These competing narratives fueled public support and deepened mistrust. The truth, as always, was caught between two stories. As the dust settled, the region faced a crossroads. Will direct attacks become the new normal, risking a cycle of escalation and all-out war? Or will both sides retreat to a tense, Cold War, relying on cyber attacks and covert operations? There's a slim hope for diplomacy. Perhaps the shock of June 2025 will push leaders towards secret talks and new rules to prevent disaster. The situation remains fragile and unresolved. The choices made in the coming months will shape the future of the Middle East. The world is watching, hoping for peace but bracing for more conflict. For millions in the region, the stakes couldn't be higher. The shadow war is out in the open now. The next move could change everything.